What if the greatest discovery of all time isn't waiting in the stars above, but in the ground beneath your feet? For centuries, explorers have mapped the oceans, climbed mountains, and reached into space. Yet less than 1% of Earth's interior has ever been seen. Seismic whispers hint at vast unknown chambers, myths speak of radiant kingdoms underground, and scattered anomalies suggest the possibility that humanity is not alone on the surface. Imagine entire civilizations that survived floods, fires, or cataclysms by retreating into the deep, building cities lit by geothermal fire, guarded by hidden gates, and watching silently as history unfolded above. But if such worlds exist, why have we never found them? Or perhaps, have we, but the truth remains buried in secrecy, dismissed as myth, or locked beneath ice and stone. Tonight we follow those echoes, from ancient scriptures and forgotten ruins to modern anomalies and forbidden maps. Let the descent begin into shadowed caverns and whispered realms, where the line between history and legend fades. Somewhere in the silence below, a question waits. Could hidden civilizations still exist inside Earth? Are you ready to step into the dark with us? Night falls, and with it comes the silence of stone. Imagine yourself lying back, the world above quieting, and the ground beneath heavy with secrets. For thousands of years, humanity has whispered of what lies below, not the shallow caves explored by lantern light, but something deeper. A world unseen, a realm of shadows and echoes. To most geologists, Earth is solid. Crust, mantle, outer core, inner core, mapped by seismic waves, charted by physics. But the human imagination has never been so easily silenced. Beneath every mountain, beneath every grave, beneath every step we take, people have envisioned another world waiting. Ancient Greece gave us Hades, a gloomy realm ruled by the unseen king. It was not merely death that haunted these tales, but a structured domain beneath the soil, with rivers to cross and gates to pass. To the Orphic initiates, the underworld was a place with directions, rules, and guardians, as if they were remembering not only dreams, but geography. These myths planted a seed, that the ground is not just matter, but memory. Far away, across oceans and centuries, the Hopi people of North America told of the Ant People. In times of fire, when the surface burned, the Ant People sheltered humanity in their vast tunnels. When the waters rose and drowned the land, they did the same again. Tall, thin figures with luminous eyes, their homes were places of refuge and renewal. To the Hopi, this was not fiction. It was history, passed through generations, spoken with reverence as though humanity itself survived because of what lay beneath. What are we to make of this persistence? Separate cultures, continents apart, yet their stories converge. Beings beneath the ground, doors that open in times of catastrophe, civilizations hidden in shadow. Mythology explains them as archetypes. Psychology calls them projections of fear. Yet there is something uncanny in the way these images return, echoing through time, refusing to disappear. Science too has uncovered reminders that beneath our feet are worlds as strange as any dream. Cappadocia, in modern Turkey, conceals vast cities carved directly into volcanic stone. Derinkuyu, with its twisting corridors and chambers, could house tens of thousands. Ventilation shafts pierced the rock to provide fresh air, wells supplied water, and hidden doors could be sealed against outsiders. To descend into its labyrinth is to feel the same unease that myths describe, a world apart, complete in itself, yet hidden beneath ordinary ground. If such human cities exist, what else might have been lost to time? Did earlier survivors, facing floods or fire, vanish into the deep? Could their memory be what we call myth today? The possibility lingers like a faint tremor in the stone. In the Renaissance, scholars redrew the world on parchment. They mapped oceans, continents, winds. And yet at the edges of knowledge they wrote 3 words. Here be dragons. A warning, a confession that what lay beyond the known was uncertain. So too with the ground beneath. We map the crust, we measure the mantle, but we have never walked those depths. Less than a fraction of a percent of Earth's interior has been touched by human hands. The question remains suspended, hauntingly simple. What if beneath the silence of stone there exists not only caverns and fire, but memory itself? Civilizations that once walked the surface, now living in echo below. As you listen, the world above fades into quiet. The weight of the earth presses down, and the possibility grows. Legends, myths, and science blur together, and the ground beneath us feels less certain. If you've followed so far, tell me, where are you listening from tonight, and at what time? Somewhere across oceans, across continents, these whispers find you. And beneath your feet the silence continues, holding its secrets. The oldest stories we know were not carved into monuments or sung as victories. They were written in clay, fragile yet enduring, carrying whispers from the world's first civilizations. When we press our eyes to these fragments, lines pressed by reed styluses in Mesopotamian river valleys more than 4,000 years ago, what we find are not tales of conquest, but descents into shadow. Humanity's earliest recorded imagination did not reach upward to the stars, but downward into the earth. The Epic of Gilgamesh gives us one of the most haunting examples. In its lines, Enkidu, the wild man who walked beside Gilgamesh, dreams of the House of Dust. It is described not as an abstract afterlife, but as a place with architecture and rules, doors to pass through, guardians to confront, rivers that flow in darkness, and inhabitants who eat clay and drink stale water. Kings and priests dwell there alongside the forgotten, as though death itself levels all, binding them together beneath the soil. For the ancient scribes, this was not simply allegory. It was a geography, a place they believed lay just below their feet, structured and inhabited. The goddess Inanna's descent into the underworld intensifies this sense of structure. Stripping her power at 7 gates, she is reduced, step by step, before meeting her sister Ereshkigal, Queen of the Dead. This is ritual drama, yes, but also an uncanny vision of thresholds, gates, and chambers. Each layer has its rule, each stage its cost, as though the poets were describing not only myth but memory, the experience of moving downward through corridors, each guarded, each demanding something in exchange. Why would the earliest civilizations describe such vivid underworlds? Perhaps because their landscapes taught them to. Mesopotamia was a land of water hidden beneath soil. Wells tapped aquifers, irrigation channels fed fields, and sudden floods revealed the violence of rivers bursting from the ground. To those who lived among mud-brick cities and buried their dead in earthen chambers, the earth itself was porous. It drank the living and concealed the dead, suggesting not void but presence beneath. Archaeology supports this impression. Beneath the great ziggurats of Ur and Uruk, temple foundations extended deep underground, with chambers carved into the soil and sealed away. These were not decorative cellars. They were ritual spaces, perhaps repositories for offerings, perhaps sanctuaries for the gods. They imply a worldview where the sacred did not only ascend to the heavens, but descended into the ground. Above, the ziggurat reached toward the sun. Below, hidden corridors mirrored that ascent in reverse. Other cultures of the region echo this duality. In Anatolia, not far from Mesopotamia, Neolithic communities built shrines at Çatalhöyük that blended homes and tombs, living quarters above, and burials beneath. To sleep was to rest above your ancestors, separated only by a floor of packed clay. In such an environment, the sense of an inhabited underworld was not distant or metaphorical. It was immediate, palpable, part of daily life. Even in the texts themselves, this closeness is tangible. Clay tablets describe libations poured to the ground, gifts for spirits who dwell below. Incantations instruct the speaker to call upon the shades of the earth, naming them as though they are neighbours who must be placated. The line between the living and the hidden dead was thin, and the language used reveals how present the underworld was in the minds of the first city dwellers. Beyond Mesopotamia, we find parallels that reinforce this pattern. In Egypt, the Book of the Dead describes the Duat, the realm beneath the earth where the sun god Ra travelled each night. There, gates and guardians awaited him, much like those faced by Inanna. The Duat was not only a realm of death, but a space of renewal, where dawn was prepared. It mirrored the cycles of the Nile itself, which vanished beneath the soil only to return with floods, bringing life. Again, the imagery is not abstraction, but geography. Caverns, rivers, chambers, all mapped as though someone had once glimpsed them. In the Orphic mysteries of Greece, golden tablets buried with the dead carry instructions. Turn left at the house of Hades, drink not from Lethe, but from Mnemosyne. Directions, warnings, maps. These tablets suggest that initiates were trained to imagine their journey underground as navigation, with landmarks and rivers as real as any on the surface. The first echoes of the underworld, then, are not whispers of fantasy. They are structured, detailed, consistent. They describe architecture, thresholds, guardians, and rivers. They suggest that the human imagination was not inventing realms from nothing, but transfiguring lived experiences into enduring myth. Perhaps they remembered the sensation of entering caverns, cool air, dripping water, echoes in the dark, and wove these into visions of shadowy kingdoms. This does not mean that subterranean civilizations literally ruled beneath Ur or Uruk, but it does mean that the idea of habitation below was not foreign. It was natural, perhaps inevitable, for cultures that built with mud and stone, who buried their dead in chambers and saw water rise from hidden springs. Their world was layered, and so their myths became layered too. The persistence of these stories, across Sumer, Akkad, Babylon, and Assyria, hints at cultural memory carried forward. Each retelling deepened the sense that what lay beneath was more than matter. It was memory, structure, presence. And if we consider the possibility that real peoples once sought survival in caves or tunnels during catastrophe, then these stories may preserve fragments of that memory, distorted by time but not wholly erased. The clay tablets are cracked now, stored in museum cases, their cuneiform lines half lost. Yet to read them is to hear the faintest resonance of voices long gone. They speak of doors that open downward, of queens who rule below, of houses filled with dust but also with order. The echoes are faint, but they are there, the first testimony that beneath us lies something more than stone. And so the descent continues. From the river valleys of Mesopotamia, where underworlds were written in clay, our path leads toward the mountains of Asia, where myths of radiant kingdoms hidden in snow and stone promise more than shadow. They promise light concealed in the depths. Mountains have always carried a double meaning. They are the highest points of the earth, their peaks touching the sky, yet they are also thresholds to the depths below. To live in their shadow is to sense not only their majesty, but their mystery, what lies hidden in their roots, in caverns carved by water and time. For millennia, cultures across the world have imagined mountains as doorways, to the divine above and to hidden kingdoms below. In the Himalayas, the myth of Shambhala arose. Within the Kalachakra Tantra, recorded around the 10th century, Shambhala is described as a radiant realm encircled by snowy peaks. Its palaces gleam with golden light, invisible to the unworthy, but accessible to those pure in heart. To devotees, Shambhala is not a metaphor, but a promise, a sanctuary of wisdom preserved until the surface world enters its darkest age. In some traditions, Shambhala lies high in hidden valleys. In others, beneath the mountains themselves, entered through secret passages known only to initiates. The geography is uncertain, but the message is clear. Wisdom retreats when the world falters, concealed within stone. Nicholas Roerich, the Russian artist and mystic, gave this myth new life in the 1920s. Travelling across Tibet and Mongolia, he recorded conversations with lamas who gestured toward distant ridges and whispered, "There lies Shambhala." In his diary, Roerich described visions of a city shining with radiant light, veiled behind the clouds, protected by unseen forces. To skeptics, these were fantasies, coloured by Roerich's own mysticism. Yet his words inspired both artists and seekers in the West, linking the Himalayan myth with a broader hunger for hidden realms. Parallel to Shambhala in Eastern tradition, Europe developed its own subterranean kingdom, Agartha. In the writings of occultists like Joseph Alexandre Saint-Yves d'Alvedre in the late 19th century, Agartha was imagined as a vast empire beneath the crust of the earth, ruled by the king of the world. Its libraries were said to contain forgotten histories, its halls filled with technologies beyond our understanding. Saint-Yves claimed to have received visions of this hidden kingdom, presenting it not as allegory, but as reality. Later, Helena Blavatsky and the Theosophists wove Agartha into their esoteric philosophies, blending Eastern mysticism with Western speculation. Together, Shambhala and Agartha became twin symbols, one radiant, one imperial, of civilizations concealed beneath mountains and stone. But why mountains? Perhaps because they conceal as much as they reveal. Beneath their peaks, glaciers feed rivers that vanish underground. Caves open in sudden mouths, leading into labyrinths where only the brave or desperate venture. The Himalayas, young and restless in geological terms, are riddled with fault lines, caverns, and underground rivers. Vast regions remain unexplored. In neighbouring China, the discovery of the Miao Room chamber in 2013 revealed a space so large it could house entire skyscrapers. Such voids remind us that mountains are not solid monoliths, but hollowed with mystery, their interiors echoing with the possibility of unseen worlds. This duality is mirrored in other traditions. In the Andes, Mount Ausen Gate is revered as both protector and dwelling place of spirits, its ice fields seen as the source of life-giving waters. Shamans describe the mountain as alive, its body containing passages to hidden realms of ancestors. In Japan, Mount Fuji is sacred not only for its summit, but for the caves at its base, where pilgrims descended to seek visions. Even in Europe, the Alps and the Pyrenees hold tales of mountain spirits, dwarves, and hidden kingdoms concealed beneath stone. Across continents, the message is the same. Mountains are guardians of doors, where surface and subterranean meet. The myths of Shambhala and Agartha also reflect a deeper cultural pattern, the belief that wisdom retreats when humanity is unworthy. When surface civilizations fall into chaos, knowledge does not vanish. It descends concealed in hidden sanctuaries, waiting for the right moment to re-emerge. This idea transforms mountains into vaults, keepers of light in an age of shadow. The faithful see them not only as barriers, but as promises that the wisdom of the ancients is not lost, only hidden. Archaeological discoveries strengthen the plausibility of such visions. In the Himalayas, entire monasteries have been built into cliff faces, their chambers carved directly into stone. Some extend into natural caves, merging human architecture with geological mystery. In Tibet, remote valleys conceal networks of tunnels said to stretch for miles. While many are collapsed or uncharted, local traditions preserve the idea that some connect to hidden realms, echoing the stories of secret entrances to Shambhala. Even in modern times, expeditions have been launched under the guise of scientific exploration, but coloured by whispers of esoteric purpose. During the 1930s, German expeditions to Tibet sought not only ethnographic knowledge, but according to rumour, gateways to hidden kingdoms beneath the mountains. Whether these stories reflect genuine belief or post-war myth-making, they underscore how deeply the image of subterranean sanctuaries beneath sacred peaks has captured imagination. The power of these myths lies in their persistence. From Buddhist scriptures to theosophical tracts, from Himalayan monasteries to European lodges, the story repeats. Somewhere beneath the mountains lies a radiant kingdom, a civilization that withdrew rather than perished, holding its secrets until the surface is ready. Perhaps they are metaphors for inner enlightenment. Perhaps they are cultural memory of real refuges. Or perhaps they are more fragments of a truth we have not yet uncovered. To stand at the base of the Himalayas is to feel this possibility. The peaks rise into blinding light, but the valleys fall into shadow. Glaciers creak, rivers vanish into rock, and caves open like mouths waiting to speak. The mountains do not answer our questions, but they invite them. They suggest that beneath grandeur lies secrecy, and that beneath silence lies presence. The myths of Shambhala and Agartha remind us that hidden civilizations are not only imagined in shadowy underworlds of the dead. They are also envisioned as radiant sanctuaries of wisdom, preserved beneath the highest mountains of the world. If humanity has always suspected that knowledge and survival retreat below in times of catastrophe, then these myths are their most luminous expressions. And from luminous mountains, the imagination moved to maps. As Europe redrew the world during the Renaissance, strange diagrams began to appear, not only of lands above, but of openings into realms below, where the edges of exploration became the doorways of legend. By the flicker of candlelight, Renaissance maps came alive. The parchment was more than paper. It was a stage where known lands stretched outward and the unknown coiled at the edges. Seas swarmed with painted whales, ships battled storms conjured in ink, and winds blew across margins from cherubic faces. Yet between these flourishes lay images that defied ordinary geography. Some maps carried whispers of openings into the earth, gateways that suggested the world was not solid but porous, riddled with unseen domains. One of the most intriguing is Gerardus Mercator's 16th century depiction of the North Pole. Unlike the endless ice we imagine today, Mercator's version shows 4 immense rivers converging at a whirlpool that drew the oceans inward. At the centre, a vast black mountain, Rupes Nigra, rose like a pillar, anchoring the world itself. To later readers, it seemed a fantastical vision of an entrance to the hollow earth. But Mercator was not a dreamer scribbling fantasy. He was the most respected cartographer of his age. If he placed such a vision on his map, it was because he trusted his sources, however strange. Where did those sources come from? Some point to Norse legends of Hypogeum, a luminous land beyond the Arctic winds, said to be inhabited by a people of long lives and hidden wisdom. Others suggest Mercator drew on medieval manuscripts now lost, echoes of sailors who pushed farther north than they should have. The truth remains uncertain, but the effect is undeniable. One of Europe's greatest mapmakers gave visible form to the possibility of a world within. A century later, Athanasius Kircher, a Jesuit polymath, extended this cartographic imagination into the very body of the earth. In his monumental Mundus Subterraneus, he illustrated vast networks of underground rivers, fiery chambers, and hidden seas. His earth was alive, coursed with veins of water and magma like blood through a body. Volcanoes became chimneys of subterranean fire, springs the tears of unseen reservoirs. Kircher's diagrams were speculative, yes, but they blurred the line between myth and science, teaching Europeans to see the earth not as inert stone, but as an organism with secret passages. As explorers pressed into the Arctic, their testimonies fed this vision. In 1596, Willem Barents and his crew became trapped in ice while seeking the Northeast Passage. They reported mirages of land where none existed, shimmering shapes rising on the horizon, sometimes appearing lush and green. Modern science calls this fata morgana, light refracted through layers of cold air. But in the 16th and 17th centuries, such illusions could be read as glimpses of hidden continents or entrances to other realms, briefly revealed before vanishing again. The fascination only deepened in the 17th century when Edmund Halley, better remembered for the comet that bears his name, suggested that Earth itself might consist of concentric shells. He proposed that each shell could harbour its own luminous atmosphere, perhaps even its own life. His reasoning stemmed not from myth, but from anomalies in compass readings, which seemed to defy ordinary explanation. Though later rejected, Halley's model was presented to the Royal Society not as fantasy, but as serious speculation. For a brief moment, the hollow earth belonged not to folklore, but to science. Other maps and diagrams followed. The Nova Orbis Tabula of 1635 illustrated not only continents but subterranean passages, with ornate drawings of tunnels and gateways below. These were not attempts at precision but at possibility, reflecting a mindset in which the world was still unfolding, its secrets not yet fixed. At the margins of the known, artists filled the void with serpents, whirlpools, and gates. And in doing so, they created more than warnings. They created seeds of myth that would germinate for centuries. The Renaissance was a time of rediscovery, when ancient manuscripts returned to circulation. Greek and Roman texts spoke of Hades, of Tartarus, of caverns beneath sacred mountains. Combined with Norse tales of subterranean dwarves and Eastern whispers of Shambhala, the idea of hidden kingdoms below seeped into the collective imagination of Europe. Maps became the bridge, blending rumour and record into a geography that hinted at more than coastlines. To hold one of these maps was to hold both certainty and uncertainty at once. The coast of Africa drawn with mathematical precision, the Arctic filled with speculation. For sailors venturing north, the image of the whirlpool and Black Mountain would haunt their imaginations. Was there truly a gate at the top of the world, a place where oceans fell into the earth itself? Even when disproved by later expeditions, the imagery endured. Mercator's vision of polar rivers still circulates today in hollow earth lore. Kircher's diagrams of fiery chambers resurface in modern depictions of subterranean kingdoms. Halley's layered earth continues to inspire writers of fiction and seekers of hidden realms. These maps were not discarded. They became talismans of possibility, reminders that the earth beneath us might not be what it seems. What they reveal is not geography alone, but desire. A desire to believe that exploration had no end, that mystery persisted not only at the edges of oceans, but beneath our very feet. The maps tell us that where knowledge stopped, imagination began. And sometimes imagination carries truths that facts cannot yet confirm. The ink may have faded, but the impression remains. The world beneath is not sealed, but waiting. The maps remind us that humanity has always suspected it, that beyond the dragons and whirlpools lay doors into another domain. And if such doors existed, why would anyone enter them? The answer lies in catastrophe. For myths tell us that when the world above drowned or burned, survival meant descent. Refuge was not in distant lands, but in the hollows of the earth itself, where hidden peoples may have endured while the surface was remade. Civilizations rarely imagine their beginnings without also imagining their ends. The oldest stories humanity carried forward are not celebrations of creation alone, but chronicles of destruction. Floods that erased cities, fires that scorched the horizon, and skies that darkened with ash. Across cultures, these narratives return with haunting consistency, as though the memory of catastrophe is etched into the human soul. And within nearly all of them lies a peculiar refrain. Survival did not always mean escaping upward to the heavens or outward across the seas. Sometimes it meant going down. The Epic of Gilgamesh, preserved on Mesopotamian tablets, records Utnapishtim's survival of the great deluge sent by the gods. His story mirrors that of Noah, whose ark rose above the waters while the world was drowned. To the Hopi, the destruction came twice, once by fire, once by flood. In both cases, they say, salvation was found through the Ant People, who opened their subterranean chambers and sheltered humanity beneath the earth until the surface was safe again. These were not mere parables of endurance. They were detailed accounts, remembered as history, of doors into the ground opening at the moment when the world above was lost. Geology reinforces these stories with unsettling precision. At the end of the last ice age, 12,000 years ago, vast sheets of ice collapsed, releasing torrents of meltwater into the seas. Oceans surged upward by more than 100 meters, swallowing coastlines where countless communities must have lived. The fertile plains of Doggerland in northern Europe, now hidden beneath the North Sea, were once home to thriving peoples. In a geological instant, their land vanished. If survival meant flight, where could they go? Some surely migrated inland, others may have followed rivers upward into mountains. But myths suggest that some went downward, into the hidden caverns that dotted their landscapes. Volcanoes, too, were remembered as agents of destruction. In 1600, Huayna Putina erupted in Peru, its ash-poisoning fields as far away as Russia. In 1815, Tambora's eruption in Indonesia shrouded the world in darkness, turning 1816 into the year without a summer. Crops failed, livestock died, and famine spread across continents. These were disasters of the modern age, yet their scale offers a window into the past. Imagine such an eruption striking prehistoric communities, their skies blotted out for years, their harvests destroyed. Where would survivors have turned? The caves and lava tubes scattered across volcanic landscapes, already familiar as temporary shelters, may have become sanctuaries of last resort. Archaeology provides glimpses of how real this instinct was. In Anatolia, the subterranean cities of Cappadocia extend for miles beneath volcanic rock. Derinkuyu could shelter tens of thousands, complete with wells, storage, and stables. To construct such a refuge required foresight and generations of effort. Was it only for military defense, as historians often argue? Or did its builders also remember times when fire rained from the sky, making the surface uninhabitable? To descend was not panic, but preparation. Indigenous traditions beyond the Hopi echo the same survival motif. The Zuni describe emergence from caverns into the world we now inhabit, guided by spirits who knew the passages below. The Mandan tell of an ancestral village underground, from which their people climbed upward when the time was right. Even in Mesoamerica, the Maya spoke of Xibalba, a subterranean realm of trials, where souls endured ordeals before renewal. Each story suggests that descent was not annihilation, but transformation, a passage through darkness into survival. Science, too, carries traces of these forgotten descents. Genetic studies reveal population bottlenecks, dramatic reductions in humanity's numbers at several points in prehistory. The most famous, around 70,000 years ago, may have reduced humanity to a few thousand individuals. The reasons remain debated: volcanic winters, asteroid impacts, climatic shifts. Yet the fact of survival is undeniable. Where did those survivors endure? Some scientists imagine coastal refuges rich in resources. Others picture sheltered mountain valleys. But myths whisper another answer: caves, tunnels, sanctuaries beneath. The instinct to hide in the earth may have preserved lineages that otherwise would have vanished. Even in recorded history, the instinct returns. In 1883, Krakatoa erupted with a force heard 3,000 miles away. Entire islands disappeared, and ash darkened skies across the globe. Rumours spread across Java and Sumatra of survivors retreating into caverns, waiting years before re-emerging. Whether fact or legend, the story reflects an enduring belief that when the surface is destroyed, the depths may still protect. It is not difficult to imagine how memory magnifies into myth. A family or tribe surviving in caves during disaster becomes, in later retelling, a whole people led by luminous guides. Natural features, glowing minerals, streams that vanish into rock, fungi that radiate faint light, become the jeweled palaces and radiant halls of subterranean lore. Catastrophe transforms memory into story, story into legend, legend into archetype. And at the core of each is the same possibility. Humanity has always known the earth can open to preserve life when all else fails. If this is so, then myths of the underworld are not simply fantasies of death. They are encoded memories of survival. They remind us that civilizations need not vanish entirely. Some may retreat, their descendants remaining hidden long after the surface healed. Perhaps they never returned, choosing instead to adapt to the darkness, becoming the hidden civilizations still whispered of today. The floodwaters receded, the fires cooled, the skies cleared. But the memory of descent endured. It was etched into tablets, carried in oral traditions, woven into sacred texts. Across continents and centuries, humanity remembered not only its fragility, but its resilience. The knowledge that when empires fell and worlds ended, there was always the possibility of refuge below. And as these myths of catastrophe and survival spread, they laid the groundwork for something more tangible. Cities carved directly into stone, sanctuaries built not as temporary shelters, but as enduring worlds. From the legends of survival, the reality of subterranean architecture emerged, reminding us that what myths described in poetry, human hands once built in silence. To enter the hidden cities of stone is to step into another world. At the surface, Cappadocia in central Turkey seems already surreal. A land of volcanic spires, soft tuff shaped into cones and valleys by wind and rain. The rock is pliable, easily cut yet durable, lending itself to human hands. For centuries, people carved homes and churches into cliffs, but beneath it all lies something far greater. Entire cities hollowed out of the earth, designed to hold not hundreds, but tens of thousands. Derinkuyu, the most famous, plunges more than 250 feet into the ground. A labyrinth of passages, stairways and chambers unfurls level by level. Archaeologists count at least 18 stories, each designed with care. At the top, narrow entrances could be sealed with immense circular stone doors, rolled into place from within. Ventilation shafts plunged deep, ensuring that fresh air reached even the lowest levels. Wells provided water, kitchens allowed for cooking, stables housed animals, and chapels gave space for prayer. Walking its corridors, one senses the planner's intent, not panic-driven hiding, but long-term habitation. These were worlds meant to endure. The scale of the excavation alone raises questions. How many generations carved this city? How did they dispose of the stone removed? Estimates suggest that thousands of workers over centuries would have been required. And yet, the design is consistent, suggesting knowledge passed down with precision. The people who built Derinkuyu did not experiment blindly. They inherited methods, perhaps from ancestors who already understood that the ground could shelter them from catastrophe. Derinkuyu is not an isolated marvel. Across Cappadocia, more than 200 underground cities have been discovered, some interconnected by tunnels that stretch for miles. Makla, another vast complex, features stables large enough for herds of animals, along with communal spaces that feel like plazas buried in shadow. These are not caves but cities, settlements with all the necessities of life, only hidden beneath stone. The purposes remain debated. Mainstream scholars argue they were refugees from invaders, perhaps the Persian armies, later Roman persecution, or Arab raids. Yet their sheer scale exceeds temporary need. Why build stables for thousands if you intended to hide only for days? Why carve chapels with frescoes if your goal was only defense? The structures feel less like bolt holes and more like a second world, one designed to be lived in when the surface became uninhabitable. Across the Mediterranean, echoes of this subterranean instinct appear. On Malta, the Saflieni Hypogeum stretches downward into 3 levels of carved chambers, dating to around 4000 BCE. The walls are adorned with red ochre spirals, the ceilings with careful carvings. Acoustics in the oracle room are so finely tuned that a voice resonates like thunder, reverberating throughout the complex. Archaeologists debate its purpose: temple, tomb, or refuge. Yet its design suggests both sacred ritual and survival, as though the people of Malta too believed that the earth itself could be a dwelling place. In the Andes, chroniclers of the Spanish conquest recorded tales of tunnels beneath Cusco, the Inca capital. Some claimed that gold and treasures were hidden within, carried into the labyrinths to escape invaders. Entrances were said to exist in temples and mountainsides, though most have collapsed or vanished. Yet in 2000, researchers rediscovered portions of the Chinkana labyrinth on Lake Titicaca's Island of the Sun. Its passages twist into darkness, their extent unknown. To the Inca, the underworld was not myth alone, but a place into which treasures, and perhaps lives, could be carried. Even in the distant Pacific, cultures practiced the art of subterranean refuge. On Easter Island, volcanic caves were expanded into dwellings, providing shelter from both enemies and the elements. In North America, cliff dwellings like those at Mesa Verde hint at the same instinct. When danger loomed, the people turned to stone, hollowing it, reshaping it into sanctuary. What connects all these places is intention. To carve stone is laborious. To create chambers vast enough for communities is monumental. These were not improvisations made in panic, but projects spanning decades or centuries. Such commitment suggests knowledge that disasters would return. Floods, fires, raids, or even something older, remembered dimly from myth. To carve a city beneath the ground is to trust that one day it will be needed. Imagining life inside such a city sharpens the sense of strangeness. Imagine waking in a chamber lit by oil lamps, the air cool and still, carried through ventilation shafts. The sounds of animals drift upward from stables below, while children's voices echo faintly down corridors. Water trickles from wells, meals are prepared in kitchens carved from stone, and prayers rise in chapels adorned with simple carvings. Days and nights blur without the sun. Life here is measured not by dawn and dusk, but by rhythm. The turning of lamps, the cycle of work, the whispers of safety in darkness. The psychological dimension cannot be ignored. To live underground is to live in silence, cut off from sky and horizon. Yet myths of hidden realms, radiant with jewels or lit by inner fire, may echo attempts to make such existence bearable. Perhaps underground cities gave rise to tales of luminous palaces because within them people sought to imagine not confinement but preservation, not darkness but hidden light. The existence of these cities confirms a critical truth. Humanity has already lived beneath the surface, and not only briefly. The scale of Cappadocia, the resonance of Malta, the legends of Cusco all suggest that subterranean life is possible when necessity demands it. And if this is true in recorded history, what of prehistory? What of earlier ages, erased by floods or fire, when survivors may have carved even deeper, leaving traces we have not yet uncovered? The stones of these cities remain cool, silent witnesses to the lives they once sheltered. Their corridors stretch into darkness, some collapsed, others still waiting. To descend into them is to feel time fold backward, to walk not only through history, but through myth made tangible. From these carved sanctuaries, the imagination leaps outward. If such cities exist that we can still explore, how many more lie undiscovered? How many legends of hidden peoples and radiant kingdoms are rooted not in fantasy, but in the memory of stone? The trail continues westward, toward North America, where a canyon carved by rivers holds its own whispers. Of caves vast enough to house civilizations, and of stories that linger in desert winds. The desert of the American Southwest has a silence that feels eternal. Red cliffs rise like frozen waves, their strata painted in ochre and violet by the slow brush of time. The Colorado River carves its way through stone that has witnessed hundreds of millions of years, creating a chasm so vast it swallows thought. The Grand Canyon. To walk its rim is to stand at the edge of time itself. Yet within this monumental landscape lies a story that unsettles even the certainty of stone. Whispers of a lost civilization hidden within its walls. In April 1909, the Arizona Gazette published an article that has since become legend. It described an expedition led by G.E. Kincaid, who claimed to have discovered a network of caverns high above the Colorado River. Inside, he reported finding statues resembling Hindu or Egyptian gods, copper tools, mummies carefully wrapped, and hieroglyphics etched into stone. The largest chambers were said to be so immense they could have housed entire cities. Kincaid suggested the Smithsonian Institution was involved, though the museum has never acknowledged the discovery. To this day, no records confirm the expedition, but the story has refused to die. Why does it persist? Perhaps because it resonates so strongly with the myths of the people who have always called this canyon sacred. To the Hopi, the canyon is more than geography. It is the place of emergence, where their ancestors climbed upward from previous worlds into the present age. The Sipu, the small opening that links this world to the one below, is remembered in their ceremonies and honoured as the threshold of renewal. When floods or fires ended earlier worlds, the Hopi say, the Ant People guided their ancestors through tunnels beneath the ground until it was safe to emerge again. For them, the canyon is not empty stone, but a doorway. Other tribes carry parallel traditions. The Zuni tell of descending into darkness before returning to the surface, guided by spirits. The Havasupai, who still dwell within the canyon today, speak of times when their ancestors were sheltered in caverns until the surface healed. These stories are not treated as fantasy, but as history, passed through generations. The canyon, with its sheer walls and hidden chambers, becomes the stage on which these memories are set. Geology supports the plausibility of such hidden spaces. The Grand Canyon's limestone layers are riddled with caves, many unexplored even now. Vast systems like those of Lechuguilla in neighboring New Mexico prove that caves can stretch for over 100 miles, with chambers large enough to swallow skyscrapers. In 2000, explorers discovered new sections of Lechuguilla filled with bizarre mineral formations never seen before. If such labyrinths exist nearby, why not within the canyon itself, their entrances hidden by landslides, floods, or deliberate concealment? The imagery of the 1909 article adds to the intrigue. Egyptian-style statues and hieroglyphs in Arizona seem implausible, yet their very strangeness makes the story magnetic. Some argue it was a hoax to sell newspapers, a piece of frontier sensationalism. Others believe it may have drawn on genuine rumors of discoveries quickly suppressed. The Smithsonian's denial, instead of closing the case, has fueled suspicion. What if something was found but deemed too disruptive to established history to reveal? Legends of caves filled with treasures and beings are not unique to Arizona. Across the Southwest, miners and explorers have long told of strange sounds, sudden collapses, or openings that seem to breathe cold air from unknown depths. Navajo traditions speak of the underworlds from which their people emerged. Spanish conquistadors in the 16th century reported hearing of golden cities hidden in the north, cities never found but perhaps remembered in distorted form from real subterranean sanctuaries. The canyon itself adds to the mystery. Its silence is deceptive. At night the winds carry strange echoes, as though the stone remembers voices. Shadows deepen into crevices that seem to lead endlessly inward. To descend into its depths is to feel watched, not by animals or people, but by the weight of ages pressing close. It is easy to imagine that doors remain sealed somewhere in those cliffs, their thresholds forgotten, their stories guarded by the desert itself. Modern seekers still search for evidence. Some claim to have identified suspiciously regular formations in photographs of canyon walls, like the outlines of doorways. Others scour maps for references to caves now off-limits to the public. A few even suggest that the US government restricts access to certain regions of the canyon for reasons not explained by conservation alone. Whether or not any of this holds truth, the persistence of the idea shows its power. The Grand Canyon is too vast, too old, too silent to be fully known. It leaves room for possibility. And what of the psychological pull of the story? For settlers and scientists arriving in the Southwest in the 19th and early 20th centuries, the canyon represented both awe and danger. It was the embodiment of the unknown, a landscape that dwarfed human ambition. To populate its depths with lost civilizations was to make sense of its immensity, to fill its silence with memory. For indigenous peoples, those memories were real, encoded in ceremony and myth. For outsiders, they became tantalizing mysteries, stories that suggested the surface of history was thinner than we believed. Even if the 1909 article was fiction, it struck a chord because it spoke to a deeper truth. Humanity has always suspected that survival, wisdom, and refuge lie below. The Grand Canyon, with its endless layers of time and shadow, became the perfect vessel for that suspicion. Its stones hold fossils of creatures long extinct. Its caves hold darkness that may never have seen the sun. Why not also the traces of civilizations forgotten by history, hidden from view yet present in memory? To stand at the rim today is to feel the canyon's gravity. Each stratum is a page of Earth's story, each shadowed alcove a possibility. The river carves relentlessly, revealing but also concealing, for every layer exposed may hide another sealed away. The whispers of the canyon endure because the canyon itself whispers, that what we see is not all there is, that within its silence something waits. And if caverns can hold whispers, they can also hold waters. Just as myths speak of civilizations sheltered in stone, they also speak of hidden seas flowing beneath. From the Grand Canyon's echoes, the trail leads us deeper, into the mysteries of subterranean oceans and lakes. Waters below the world, dark and yet alive. Water is the oldest companion of life, the element from which our world was born. It is patient, persistent, and hidden. Rivers cut canyons for millions of years until mountains fall, springs rise unexpectedly from dry stone, and entire seas disappear only to return beneath the ground. To ancient peoples, water was not simply a necessity, it was mystery itself, and again, they imagined that the most powerful waters of all did not lie on the surface, but below, flowing in silence through hidden veins of the earth. The Babylonians told of Abzu, the primeval subterranean ocean, the reservoir of all fresh water, and the domain of a sleeping god. For the Egyptians, creation itself began with none, an endless abyss of dark waters beneath all land. These myths are not fanciful abstractions. They echo the lived reality of finding wells and springs that seem to emerge from nowhere, as if drawn from an unseen sea below. In cultures that thrived in deserts or along unpredictable rivers, the sudden appearance of water from the ground was nothing less than divine intervention. Science, centuries later, would confirm that such visions hold truth. In 2014, researchers announced evidence of a colossal reservoir deep within the Earth's mantle, some 700 kilometers below the surface. Locked within a mineral called ringwoodite, this hidden water may equal 3 times the volume of all the oceans combined. It is not free-flowing, but bound in crystal structure, yet its presence reshaped our understanding of the planet. The Earth, it seems, is not dry inside, but wet, saturated, and alive with hidden seas that mirror the myths of antiquity. Closer to the surface, examples of subterranean water are tangible. Beneath Antarctica, sealed under nearly 4 kilometers of ice, lies Lake Vostok. Its waters have been isolated for more than 15 million years, cut off from the surface world. When Russian scientists drilled into it in 2012, they feared contaminating an untouched ecosystem, one that might host forms of life unknown to science. In Romania's Mobile Cave, sealed for over 5 million years, explorers discovered not just microbes, but entire ecosystems thriving in poisonous air, feeding not on sunlight, but on sulfur and methane. Life had adapted to darkness, proving that water, even when toxic and sealed away, can sustain worlds as strange as alien planets. Namibia holds another wonder, Dragon's Breath Cave. Within it rests the world's largest non-glacial underground lake, so vast that divers have not yet reached its limits. Its still waters breathe out a cold mist, as if the cavern itself exhales. The surface ripples faintly, though no wind disturbs it, as though some unseen movement stirs below. To stand at its edge is to feel a presence, not only of water, but of depth, of mystery, of time itself pooling in silence. Other underground lakes are no less enigmatic. In Kazakhstan, Lake Kindy conceals an entire submerged forest beneath its surface, its skeletal trees preserved like guardians in icy water. In Mexico's cenotes, limestone sinkholes sacred to the Maya, divers have found labyrinths of flooded caves stretching for hundreds of miles. To the Maya, these were portals to Xibalba, the underworld. To modern explorers, they are reminders that vast realms lie beneath, holding both life and legend. Even geology lends its voice to the story. Earthquakes often unleash sudden eruptions of water and sand, as though the ground itself had burst into tears. During the New Madrid earthquakes of 1811, 1812, the Mississippi River briefly ran backward, and fountains of sand and water erupted from fields across the Midwest. Witnesses described the earth roaring, groaning, and exhaling water in plumes. To them, it seemed as though subterranean seas had risen up in protest. These accounts blur seamlessly into myth. Hindu cosmology places the serpent Nagas in jeweled palaces beneath the waters of Patala, their halls radiant with gems that glowed in the dark. The Norse spoke of wells hidden beneath Yggdrasil, the world tree, each feeding different realms. Even the Bible recalls the fountains of the great deep bursting forth during the flood of Noah. To the ancients, cataclysm was not only rain from above, but waters erupting from below, as if the earth itself carried within it the power of destruction and renewal. If hidden waters are real, could hidden civilizations have adapted to them? Imagine caverns warmed by geothermal heat, with lakes teeming with blind fish, fungi growing on damp stone, and glowing bacteria lighting the walls. A people who mastered such an environment could live unseen for centuries, thriving where others saw only void. To us, it would appear alien, but to them, it would be home. The The discovery of extremophiles, organisms thriving in boiling vents at the bottom of oceans or miles deep in bedrock, makes such speculation less far-fetched. These microbes live without sunlight, feeding on chemical reactions alone. If life can thrive in such hostile environments, why not more complex beings? Why not societies? The leap from microbes to civilizations may seem wide, but myths have always insisted that underworld waters are not barren. They are kingdoms, radiant with life. Consider again Lake Vostok, sealed in ice. If it harbours unknown species, they have evolved in isolation for millions of years. Their existence would confirm that the Earth's hidden waters are not sterile, but generative. Now extend that thought. If life flourishes beneath ice and stone, perhaps myths of luminous palaces, jewelled halls, and radiant beings are distorted memories of encounters with worlds that truly existed below. The persistence of these stories, combined with the growing scientific evidence of hidden lakes and oceans, invites us to reconsider. The ancients may not have been wrong in imagining vast waters below the surface. They may have been remembering, in mythic language, what geology and biology now reveal, that the Earth is hollowed with reservoirs, some sealed, some flowing, some alive with life unseen. The motif of water beneath the world lingers as both fact and symbol. Fact, because science confirms hidden oceans within stone. Symbol, because in every tradition these waters are tied to survival, renewal, and mystery. They remind us that beneath our feet lies not only solid ground but liquid potential, seas waiting in silence, reservoirs vast enough to reshape our understanding of the planet. If waters below can sustain life, then perhaps they can also sustain civilizations. The next step is to listen not to what flows, but to what shakes. Tremors, hums and vibrations that ripple upward as though something stirs within. For if water is the cradle of life, then tremors may be its heartbeat, faint but insistent, pulsing through the ground we walk each day. The earth is never truly still. Even when the ground feels solid beneath our feet, it hums with hidden movement. Deep below, tectonic plates grind, molten rock circulates, and pressure builds silently for years before releasing in a sudden shudder. To the human ear, an earthquake is chaos, walls shaking, rivers shifting, mountains splitting. Yet to ancient peoples, these movements were voices from the deep. If floods and fires were the wrath of the sky, then tremors were the roar of the world beneath. In Japan, the myth was clear. The giant catfish Namazu lived beneath the islands, restrained only by the god Kashima pressing a stone upon its head. When Kashima's attention wavered, Namazu thrashed and the land shook violently. After the devastating Edo earthquake of 1855, woodblock prints depicted Namazu as both destroyer and saviour, punishing the greedy while redistributing wealth, shaking loose the treasures of the rich. Here the tremor was not only geological but moral, an echo of justice rising from below. The Norse told of Loki, bound beneath the earth as punishment. Venom dripped from a serpent above him, and each time it struck his face, Loki writhed in pain, shaking the world with his struggle. To the Greeks, Poseidon was the earth shaker, his trident striking the seafloor to unleash quakes. In the Andes, myths spoke of Pachamama, the earth mother, shifting her body when disrespected by humans. Each tale localized the same experience, the ground groaning as though alive, as though something immense moved just out of sight. Modern science explains tremors with tectonics, yet even science reveals mysteries that resist easy answers. In 1811 and 1812, the Mississippi Valley convulsed with some of the most powerful earthquakes in recorded history. Church bells rang in Boston, 1,000 miles away. The Mississippi itself ran backward for hours, its waters surging against their course. Witnesses spoke of trees snapping, ground opening, fountains of sand and water shooting into the air. Some described the sound as a thunder that came not from the sky, but from beneath their feet, a deep, unending roar. Geologists call it liquefaction, pressure forcing water upward. But to those who lived through it, the world itself seemed to have cracked open. More recently, in November 2018, seismographs across the globe registered a strange event. Originating near the island of Mayotte, east of Africa, the tremor circled the planet for 20 minutes. Unlike a normal earthquake, it had no sharp jolt. Instead, it rang as a pure, low-frequency hum, uniform and sustained, as if Earth had struck a single note. No one on the surface felt it. Only machines recorded its presence, leaving scientists baffled. Eventually, they concluded it was caused by magma moving beneath the seafloor. But the unusual harmony of the signal sparked speculation. To the human imagination, it sounded less like geology and more like a heartbeat, a signal from something vast and hidden. Mystery booms, too, add to the chorus. Across the United States, India, and parts of Europe, residents have reported sudden detonations, sky-splitting rumbles that shake windows yet leave no trace. In the 1970s, the eastern seaboard of America was plagued by these unexplained sounds, nicknamed Seneca guns. Scientists have proposed small earthquakes, atmospheric anomalies, even sonic booms from jets. Still, many remain unexplained. To those who hear them, they feel like messages, sudden reminders that the ground is not mute, that forces below sometimes demand to be heard. Even deeper, seismology has uncovered puzzles. At the boundary between Earth's mantle and core, more than 2,000 kilometers down, lurk colossal structures known as large low-shear velocity provinces. These blobs are denser than surrounding rock and larger than continents, yet their nature is unknown. Are they remnants of ancient collisions, swallowed planets from the solar system's birth? Or could they be structures of another kind, something ordered rather than chaotic? The tremors that pass through them change shape, as though distorted by an intelligence we cannot yet comprehend. For those who dream of hidden civilizations, such anomalies are fertile ground. If an advanced society retreated beneath the crust long ago, its presence would not necessarily be visible as ruins. It might be detectable as sound, as tremors, vibrations, or resonances that escape upward. Just as we might hear the distant hum of machinery in a quiet building, perhaps the Earth's unexplained quakes are faint echoes of activity far below. Skeptics dismiss such ideas as fantasy, yet even skeptics admit that we know more about the surface of Mars than about the interior of our own planet. Less than 1% of Earth's volume has ever been directly sampled. Everything else is inference, stitched together from seismic waves and mathematical models. In that uncertainty, imagination finds space. Myths once called these tremors gods or monsters. Science calls them anomalies. But both, in their own way, admit the same truth. The ground moves, and we do not fully understand why. Imagine for a moment hearing the deep hum of Mayotte, not as data on a screen, but with your own body. A note sustained across oceans, resonating through stone, felt in your bones as a vibration without source. Would it not feel like the earth itself was alive, speaking in a voice too low to comprehend? Would it not remind you of the stories your ancestors told? Of catfish, of serpents, of gods chained below? Tremors in the deep are more than geology. They are the pulse of mystery, a reminder that the planet beneath our feet is restless, dynamic, and perhaps more than matter alone. Myths gave these movements meaning. Science gives them measurement. Between them lies the possibility that tremors are not only natural, but also memory. Echoes of presences we have not yet encountered, stirring in the darkness below. If tremors are the pulse of the deep, then heat is its breath. For the same fire that shakes mountains also feeds warmth upward, filling caves with steam and lighting minerals until they glow. In the next descent, we turn to that fire, not destructive, but sustaining, to imagine how hidden civilizations could thrive, illuminated not by the sun, but by the fire within. To stand at the edge of a volcanic vent is to feel the earth breathing. The ground is warm beneath your feet, the air thick with sulfur, and the sound is like an endless exhalation rising from the planet's lungs. Most see danger here, but others see something else. Power, warmth, even the possibility of life. If civilizations sought to endure beneath the surface, what better ally could they have than the inexhaustible fire of the earth itself? For as long as humans have known fire, they have also known its subterranean sources. In Iceland, geysers spout boiling water into the cold air, and volcanic steam has been harnessed for centuries to warm homes and cook meals. In Italy, the volcanic fields around Naples were seen by the Romans as the breath of the underworld, yet they also fed the famed baths that soothed emperors and citizens alike. Even today, Iceland derives nearly all its heat and a quarter of its electricity from geothermal energy, proof that the hidden fires of the earth can sustain entire nations. Biology, too, shows us the astonishing reach of this underground flame. At the bottom of the Pacific, in the abyssal plains where sunlight never reaches, hydrothermal vents teem with life. These black smokers billow clouds of superheated minerals, yet around them thrive ecosystems that defy expectation. Tube worms stretching taller than a man, blind shrimp glowing faintly with bioluminescence, colonies of crabs clustered in the warmth. Here, life does not depend on photosynthesis, but on chemosynthesis. Organisms feeding on the chemical energy of sulfur and methane. In a world of darkness, fire becomes light, and heat becomes sustenance. If such alien ecologies flourish in the depths of oceans, why not in caverns beneath our feet? Mythology seems to have anticipated this vision. In Hindu cosmology, the subterranean Patala realms are said to glow with radiant jewels, their light so brilliant that no sun is needed. Palaces of the Nagas shimmer with inner fire, lit by gems that refract subterranean brilliance. Dante's Inferno envisioned his descent through layers of fire and stone, not as lifeless void but as ordered realms structured by heat and light. Even the Zoroastrians revered eternal flames emerging from fissures in the ground, temples built around fire that never seemed to die. Each of these stories is an attempt to articulate the same intuition. The earth beneath is alive with energy, and where there is energy, there may be life. Science has witnessed moments when this hidden power erupts without warning. In 1986, Lake Nyos in Cameroon released a massive cloud of carbon dioxide from volcanic reservoirs beneath. The invisible gas swept across the valleys, suffocating more than 1,700 people in a single night. It was a tragedy, but also a revelation. The Earth stores energies and forces we cannot always predict, waiting in silence until they surface. The same forces that destroy could also preserve if harnessed carefully. For a civilization adapted to the depths, geothermal systems could be both danger and salvation, a heartbeat of fire that, once understood, could provide endless power. Imagine descending into a cavern lit not by torches, but by radiant fungi and refracted crystals. The walls shimmer with moisture, catching the glow of minerals that seem to burn with their own light. Steam hisses from fissures, powering mechanisms hidden in shadow. Pools of warm water bubble, their surfaces rippling in orange and green, while crops adapted to heat and low light grow in terraced chambers. Such a vision seems like fantasy, but it is extrapolated from what we already know. Mushrooms glowing faintly in damp caves, extremophiles thriving in volcanic vents, minerals shining under geothermal light. It would take only imagination, or memory, to transform these elements into the radiant kingdoms of myth. Could this explain the consistency of subterranean legends? The jeweled halls of Patala, the luminous caverns of Agartha, the forges of dwarves in Norse lore, all describe not darkness, but brilliance. These are not tales of mere survival in gloom, but of flourishing under an inner light. Perhaps those who once sheltered in volcanic caves or geothermal chambers saw something so strange, so otherworldly, that they remembered it as radiant cities built by hidden peoples. The memory became myth, and myth became a map of possibility. Geology itself provides hints. Lava tubes, natural tunnels formed by flowing magma, exist on nearly every volcanic landscape. Some stretch for miles, large enough to house entire communities. In Hawaii, early Polynesians used them for shelter and ritual. In Iceland, Surtshellar Cave is linked with folklore of giants and outlaws who dwelt within. These are small glimpses of what could be far greater below. Networks of tunnels warmed by geothermal heat, vast enough to sustain entire populations if cultivated with ingenuity. Skeptics point to the extreme temperatures and crushing pressures deeper in the mantle. Surely no human, no civilization could endure such conditions. And yet, our assumptions falter against nature's adaptability. Extremophiles thrive in boiling springs, in acid pools, even within solid rock miles below the surface. Some bacteria withstand radiation 1,000 times stronger than what would kill us. Life, it seems, refuses to vanish where energy persists. If microbes can endure such extremes, then who is to say that over millennia, more complex beings, or survivors with knowledge lost to us, could not have done the same? Consider also our own tentative steps. Humanity has already built geothermal plants inside volcanic landscapes, carved cities into cliffs, and created underground laboratories shielded from cosmic rays. If in a few centuries we can achieve this, what might be possible in 1,000, in 10,000? If civilizations older than ours retreated below, their mastery of geothermal energy could have surpassed what we can imagine, leaving traces we mistake for legend. The fire below whispers possibilities. It suggests that beneath us may lie not only silence and stone, but radiant worlds powered by the Earth's own heart. Perhaps the myths of jeweled palaces and glowing forges are not allegories, but memories distorted by time. Perhaps survivors of ancient cataclysms found in geothermal fire the light to endure, the warmth to rebuild, the energy to create civilizations hidden from the sun. And if civilizations can adapt to fire and heat, perhaps they can also shape tools, craft wonders, and leave legacies. Across the world, myths speak of hidden engineers, smiths of dwarves, serpent kings, pale-eyed miners who built beneath stone with skill beyond men. As we leave the radiant glow of subterranean fire, we step toward these beings of memory and myth, the hidden engineers who may still whisper in the depths. Every culture remembers them, figures of the deep who were not gods nor ghosts, but builders. Their stories are curiously consistent, even when oceans and centuries separate them. They appear pale or scaled, small or serpentine, but always marked by one trait: mastery of craft. They forge, they tunnel, they mine, they guard treasures. They are the hidden engineers, shaping worlds in stone, remembered in myth as though humanity once encountered them in the depths. In Norse sagas, dwarves inhabit Svartalfheim, a subterranean realm of forges and furnaces. From their anvils came the most legendary artifacts: Thor's hammer Mjolnir, Odin's spear Gungnir, and Freya's golden boar Gullinbursti. These objects were not merely weapons, but embodiments of impossible skill, suggesting that the dwarves held knowledge far beyond ordinary men. Their home was never the surface, but caverns lit by molten fire, where hammer blows echoed like thunder. India's Nagas tell a parallel tale. These serpent beings dwell in jeweled palaces beneath rivers and mountains. In the Mahabharata, the hero Arjuna descends into their domain, where light shines from radiant gems and treasures glimmer in abundance. The Nagas are not remembered as hostile alone. They are guardians of wisdom, keepers of secrets hidden beneath the earth. Their skills extend to architecture and knowledge of cosmic cycles, as if they too were engineers of time itself. Among the Cherokee, legends recall the Moon-Eyed People, pale-skinned beings with large sensitive eyes, unable to bear the sun. They emerged only at night, living in caves and shadowed valleys. Some stories depict them as enemies, others as neighbours, but always distinct. To imagine a people adapted to darkness is to picture skin drained of pigment, eyes wide to capture the faintest light, a description that eerily resembles the adaptations of animals who live underground. Elsewhere, the Celts spoke of the Tuatha de Danann retreating into hollow hills after their defeat, becoming the Aos, or fairy folk, said to dwell in mounds and caverns. In Slavic tales, domovoi and chthonic spirits worked in mines, sometimes warning miners of danger, sometimes punishing greed. Folklore from Bolivia tells of the Tio, a horned being who dwells in the mines of Potosi, guardian of both riches and death. These motifs repeat: beings beneath, connected to stone, craft, and hidden wealth. Archaeology occasionally brushes against these legends. In the Hypogeum of Malta, elongated skulls were discovered, sparking speculation of an ancient people different from those on the surface. Excavations revealed chambers with unusual acoustics, where even a whisper resonates as if amplified by unseen voices. Did such places give rise to stories of otherworldly engineers? Or were they built by them? In South America, Spanish chroniclers recorded tunnels beneath Cusco so vast that none who entered returned. Miners in the Andes later spoke of hearing rhythmic pounding deep within shafts, as though another people were working just beyond the stone. In Europe's Harz Mountains, miners told of the Bergmenschen, little men glimpsed in the shadows, whose knocking warned of cave-ins. Scientists today explain such sounds as the shifting of rock or dripping water, but the persistence of the tales suggests a deeper resonance. Modern genetics adds a curious twist. Studies of ancient DNA reveal ghost lineages, traces of ancestors who appear in our genomes, but whose bones or artifacts have never been found. These unknown peoples mixed with us, then vanished without a trace. Where did they go? Some vanished in conquest, others in absorption. But could a fragment have chosen seclusion, retreating into mountains and caves, leaving only whispers in bloodlines and myths? The idea of subterranean engineers may even encode memory of lost technologies. Consider the Antikythera mechanism, discovered in a shipwreck off Greece. A gear-driven device capable of predicting eclipses, built over 2 millennia ago. If such knowledge could be forgotten on the surface, could it also have been preserved elsewhere, perhaps in communities who chose not to return to the light? Myths of dwarves forging impossible weapons or nagas keeping cosmic secrets may echo encounters with knowledge older than we realize. Picture it. A cavern illuminated not by sunlight but by glowing minerals. Figures move in the half-light, pale and deliberate. Hammers ring against stone, sparks rise in the dark, and shafts of air whisper through hidden vents. Tools are forged, tunnels extended, chambers shaped with precision. To surface dwellers stumbling upon such a scene, the beings would appear not human, but otherworldly, children of stone and shadow, architects of the unseen. The memory of that encounter, retold and magnified, would endure as legend. Even today, the motif lives on. Stories of little people circulate in Appalachia. Miners in Wales speak of knockers, spirits who tap warnings in the dark. In Russia's Ural Mountains, legends tell of the Chud, an ancient people said to have vanished beneath the earth, sealing themselves in when invaders came. Each of these stories insists on the same truth, that below us, hidden in silence, dwell builders we can sense but never fully see. Skeptics argue that these are cultural projections, metaphors for human labour in mines and caves. Yet the breadth of the stories, from Scandinavia to India, from the Andes to the Appalachians, suggests more than coincidence. They may be distorted memories of encounters with real peoples, adapted to life underground, remembered as something other. If such hidden engineers ever existed, their legacy would not be stone walls or monuments. It would be the myths themselves, consistent, persistent, and universal, and perhaps the faint signatures in our DNA, the ghostly echoes of unions with peoples now invisible. From jeweled palaces to echoing mines, from mythic forges to unexplored tunnels, the image is the same. Civilizations hidden, crafting, enduring in silence. They remind us that to imagine hidden civilizations inside Earth is not only to dream of survival, but of creativity. The ability to build, to adapt, to engineer life in darkness. And if myths of hidden engineers have carried across centuries, then perhaps their echo extends even farther, to the heavens themselves. For if Earth can be imagined as hollow, with worlds within, might not the same be true of the moon that hangs above us? Its strange tremors and unexplained echoes invite us to look upward even as we continue to descend. The night sky has always been a mirror, reflecting back our questions about what lies below. When the Apollo missions reached the moon, they carried seismographs to measure its hidden structure. In 1969, after astronauts departed, NASA deliberately crashed a spent module onto the lunar surface. The moon shuddered, and then, to the astonishment of scientists, it vibrated for nearly an hour. The moon rang like a bell, the reports said. Later impacts confirmed the same strange resonance. The explanation was geological dryness, a lack of water to dampen vibrations, Yet to others, it was proof that the moon might be hollow, its heart less solid than we had imagined. The idea was not new. In the 1960s, Soviet scientists Mikhail Vasin and Alexander Shcherbakov advanced the spaceship moon hypothesis. They speculated that the moon might be an artificial construct, hollowed out and set in orbit by unknown intelligences. Though dismissed by mainstream astronomy, the theory resonated with older myths. Aristotle recorded that some Akkadian tribes remembered a time before the moon existed. In Africa and South America too, stories persist of an age before the sky bore its pale companion. To cultures across the world, the moon was not eternal. It arrived, it changed, it had a history. What does this have to do with hidden civilizations inside Earth? Perhaps everything. If humanity can imagine hollowness in the moon, then Earth's myths of subterranean realms seem less isolated, part of a larger pattern of seeing worlds within worlds. The resonance of the moon, the tremors of the Earth, both hint at cavities, at emptiness, pregnant with possibility. Anomalies deepen the intrigue. Lunar mass concentrations, mascons, beneath impact basins, puzzle scientists, as if the moon hides dense structures below. Some craters are far deeper than expected, their flaws inexplicably reinforced. Magnetic fields linger in places they should not, as if remnants of forgotten processes. Each discovery widens the space for speculation. If the moon holds mysteries beneath its crust, could Earth do the same, only closer, and perhaps inhabited? Legends entwine the celestial with the subterranean. In the visions of some mystics, beings of Shambhala and Agartha were not bound only to the earth, but moved through heavens and depths alike. Theosophists in the 19th century even linked lunar mysteries with subterranean masters, suggesting that both above and below, advanced beings watch in silence. Skeptics see these connections as fantasy, coincidences woven into conspiracy. Yet the parallels remain haunting. Earth shakes, the moon rings, and myths across continents describe realms hidden within. The mirror of the sky reflects the secret of the ground. The gaze returns downward. If even the moon can seem hollow, what of the earth beneath us, with its caves, its oceans, its tremors, its warmth? The moon whispers of resonance, but earth holds something more. A chorus of myths and ruins that suggest not emptiness, but presence. Presence structured, enduring, and perhaps still alive. In sacred texts and rituals, these presences are remembered. Palaces glowing with jewels, serpent kings ruling beneath, fiery underworlds and paradises hidden in shadow. Religion gave them form, mythology gave them voice. To those who believed, the earth beneath was not silent stone but ordered kingdoms. And so we descend, from lunar echoes into scriptural visions, where faith itself insists that hidden realms endure. Sacred texts across the world repeat the same refrain. Beneath the earth lies more than stone. For some it is torment, for others it is paradise. For still others it is the seat of wisdom hidden away. Religion has always looked downward, seeing not lifeless soil but kingdoms structured with rulers, laws, and light of their own. In Christianity, the underworld became hell, a realm imagined as an inverted kingdom beneath the crust of the earth. Dante's Inferno painted its circles descending ever deeper, each more ordered than the last, until at the frozen centre, Satan himself was bound. This was not chaos, but a grim architecture, suggesting that even punishment required a geography below. In Hindu cosmology, the Patala realms offered a different vision, palaces of serpent beings, the Nagas, adorned with radiant gems that illuminated the dark. Patala was no place of suffering, but of beauty, wealth, and hidden knowledge. To descend into Patala was not to be damned, but to enter a world parallel to our own, one that thrived without the sun. Islamic tradition speaks of the jinn, beings of smokeless fire who inhabit ruins, deserts, and caves. The Quran mentions layers of the earth, each with mysteries of its own. Folklore preserves countless tales of jinn inhabiting subterranean passages, guarding treasures, or whispering knowledge to those who dare descend. In Buddhism, Shambhala remained a vision of hidden radiance, a kingdom concealed within mountains and perhaps beneath them. To the Taoists of China, the immortal grottos served a similar role, caves where sages withdrew, finding doorways into eternal realms of wisdom. Even in indigenous traditions, from the Navajo emergence myth to the Maori tales of Rarohanga, humanity is said to have climbed upward from earlier worlds beneath into the one we now inhabit. Why do religions describe such realms with such consistency? Some scholars argue these are metaphors for inner states, the descent into shadow, the transformation of the soul, but the imagery persists in physical form: gates, rivers, palaces, cities, jewels, flames. It is as if memory of real subterranean places was transfigured into spiritual geography. Even archaeology has unearthed resonances with these stories. In Malta's Hypogeum, a subterranean temple, chambers amplify voices into booming resonance, echoing descriptions of voices magnified in the depths. In Cappadocia, crosses carved into stone sanctuaries blur the line between refuge and cathedral. The sacred has always had a place beneath the ground. One image captures this legacy: the jewels of Patala, gems that glow without sunlight, lighting palaces in eternal night. To us, it sounds like myth, yet science tells of bioluminescence, of glowing fungi and minerals that shimmer in caves. The metaphor may not be invention, but memory, distorted, refracted, yet anchored in truth. Religion teaches that what is hidden is not lost. It is preserved until the time is right to reveal it. Perhaps that is why these stories endure. Whether seen as allegory or memory, they testify to an ancient instinct, that beneath us lies order, wisdom, and presence, not void. And if sacred texts describe radiant palaces below, what then of the caverns themselves, the physical spaces where life thrives in alien conditions? To move from myth to geology is not to leave mystery behind, but to find it deepened. For in the caverns of Earth, nature itself has created worlds that seem as strange and wondrous as any scripture. Step into the mouth of a vast cavern, and the world above dissolves. Light fades, the air cools, and the ground beneath shifts into silence. The walls glisten with moisture, minerals sparkle faintly, and the echo of a single drop can sound like thunder. To descend into such places is to enter landscapes that feel more like alien planets than parts of our own Earth. Consider Mammoth Cave in Kentucky, stretching for more than 400 miles, the longest known cave system in the world. Even after centuries of exploration, new passages continue to be mapped. Its sheer scale suggests that entire hidden countries could exist beneath our feet, invisible until stumbled upon. In New Mexico, Lechuguilla Cave plunges more than 1,600 feet, revealing crystal-lined chambers that had never felt a breath of surface air. The deeper explorers travel, the stranger the environment becomes, a reminder that the earth below is alive with possibilities. Some caverns are not only vast but self-contained worlds. In Vietnam, Son Doong Cave is so immense that clouds form within it, and an entire jungle grows beneath its ceiling. Sunlight pierces openings to nourish trees that stretch nearly 100 feet high, while underground rivers carve their own paths. To stand within Son Doong is to feel that you are no longer on Earth, but in a hidden universe with its own atmosphere, climate, and laws. Even more alien are places like Movile Cave in Romania, sealed off for over 5 million years. Its air is toxic to humans, yet within thrive more than 30 unique species that feed not on sunlight but on chemosynthesis, drawing energy from sulfur and methane in the rock. Spiders, scorpions, and blind leeches flourish in total darkness, surviving in ways we once thought impossible. If such ecosystems can exist unnoticed for millions of years, who can say what else might be concealed deeper still? In Mexico's Cave of the Crystals, explorers found selenite columns over 30 feet long, shimmering like pillars in a palace of glass. The air was so hot and humid that survival required protective suits, yet the site was otherworldly. Chambers sculpted not by human hands but by geologic time, as majestic as any cathedral. Standing within, one could almost believe the myths of jeweled palaces beneath the earth, the radiant halls of Patala or Agartha. Biologists now see caves as laboratories of adaptation. Extremophiles, organisms thriving in extremes of heat, pressure, and darkness, show us that life is far more resilient than we imagined. Each discovery widens the horizon of possibility. If microbes, insects, and even complex ecosystems can thrive sealed off from the surface, then why not something greater? Why not civilizations adapted to cavernous worlds that we have only glimpsed? Legends of pale-eyed beings, dwarves in their forges, or ant people guiding humanity during floods may have begun in encounters with creatures or tribes who lived in such places. Over time, memory magnified them into myth, but the caverns themselves remain. Proof that vast hidden spaces do exist, capable of sustaining life. These alien worlds beneath the crust remind us that mystery is not confined to imagination. It dwells in stone, in water, in darkness. To walk among them is to feel time folding backward, as though we are visitors to another realm. And perhaps we are. For if caverns can hold jungles, rivers, and entire ecosystems, then the idea of hidden civilizations within Earth seems less like fantasy and more like an unanswered question. And yet, caverns are also places of refuge. When civilizations fall, to floods, eruptions, or famine, survivors seek shelter. Myths tell of peoples who descended when the surface burned or drowned, waiting until the world above was safe again. The collapse of empires leaves scars in history, but perhaps also hidden legacies in the depths. Civilizations rise with brilliance, only to collapse in silence. Cities once filled with light become ruins swallowed by earth and time. Yet in the wake of catastrophe, myths suggest that some did not vanish. They descended. Floods, eruptions, famines, and sudden climate shifts forced humanity to seek refuge wherever survival was possible. Sometimes that meant mountains, sometimes ships, and sometimes, according to the oldest stories, it meant the deep earth. The myth of Atlantis, told by Plato, is often remembered as a tale of hubris punished by the sea. Yet if an island civilization could be drowned in a single night, survivors would not all be lost. Some could have retreated inland or downward, carrying fragments of knowledge into hidden sanctuaries. Could the echoes of Atlantis live not only beneath waves, but also beneath mountains and caverns, preserved by those who refuse to let memory die? Natural disasters confirm the plausibility. In 1815, Mount Tambora erupted in Indonesia with such force that global skies dimmed, crops failed across continents, and 1816 became known as the year without a summer. Imagine this on a prehistoric scale, when infrastructure was fragile and survival hung by a thread. Volcanic winters, firestorms, or sudden floods would drive people into caves, not for hours, but for generations. The memory of such refuge could easily grow into stories of entire peoples who lived below while the surface remained uninhabitable. Genetic studies hint at the same. Human history carries marks of bottlenecks, times when our population shrank to almost nothing. The most dramatic, around 70,000 years ago, reduced humanity to perhaps a few thousand individuals. We know they survived. But where? Some argue on mountain ridges, others along coasts. The myths tell us, beneath. In hidden chambers, in caverns warmed by geothermal heat, in places sealed away until the surface healed. Indigenous traditions worldwide echo this descent. The Hopi describe the ant people guiding humanity below during fire and flood. The Zuni speak of emerging from caverns into the present world. The Maori tell of Rarohenga, an underworld where ancestors dwell until it is time to return. Each culture frames survival not only as endurance, but as passage. A door opening downward, leading to continuity when the surface was erased. Archaeology too hints at continuity through collapse. In Cappadocia, vast underground cities appear to have been expanded in stages, suggesting repeated use across centuries of crisis. In Malta's Hypogeum, ritual and refuge blend, as if communities wove sacred meaning into their survival below. These are not panicked improvisations. They are legacies of knowledge passed down. Knowledge that when empires fell, the earth itself could shelter what was precious. The question lingers. When floods erased coastlines at the end of the Ice Age, When volcanic winters choked the sky? When empires crumbled into dust? Who hid below? And if they did, what became of them? Did they re-emerge, blending silently into new cultures, their legacy remembered only as myth? Or did some remain, deep in caverns, their existence folded out of history, waiting still in the silence? The collapse of empires leaves ruins we can see, toppled stones, broken walls, but it may also leave hidden realms we cannot yet find. And in the modern age, whispers of secrecy and suppression suggest that the search has not ended. Expeditions into Antarctica, military missions at the poles, and deep drilling projects all carry the scent of mystery. If survivors of lost worlds retreated below, perhaps their presence has not gone unnoticed, only unspoken. The 20th century gave the Hollow Earth legend a new stage. No longer bound only to myth or scripture, it stepped into the realm of politics, military power, and secrecy. What had been whispered in temples and encoded in maps now appeared in the shadow of modern exploration. And at the centre of this transformation was a man whose name still echoes: Admiral Richard E. Byrd. In 1946, the United States launched Operation High Jump, the largest Antarctic expedition of its time. Officially, it was a military training exercise. In reality, it deployed more than 4,700 men, 13 ships, and 33 aircraft to the most remote continent on Earth. The sheer scale sparked speculation. Why send an armada to a land of ice? When the expedition ended abruptly after only a few months, rumours spread. Aircraft lost, encounters with mysterious craft, openings glimpsed in the ice. In later decades, a diary attributed to Byrd appeared, describing a hidden land within the pole, lush and warm, inhabited by an advanced civilization who warned humanity against nuclear war. Historians dismiss the diary as forgery, but the myth had already taken root. Antarctica became a canvas for the imagination. In 1959, the Antarctic Treaty was signed, placing the continent under international protection and banning military activity. To skeptics, it was a triumph of cooperation. To others, it was proof. Governments had agreed to keep something hidden. Why else, they asked, would rival nations unite so quickly to lock away a land rich in resources? The suspicion remains that Antarctica's ice may conceal caverns as vast as continents, sanctuaries of those who fled the surface long ago. Other mysteries feed the story. In Russia, the Kola superdeep borehole reached more than 12 kilometers into the Earth before heat and pressure forced it to stop. Rumors grew that the drill had struck hollow chambers, even voices, later exposed as hoaxes, but impossible to erase from popular memory. In Germany, tales of Nazi expeditions to Tibet and Antarctica suggested a search for Shambhala, Agartha, or other hidden kingdoms. Documents seized at the end of World War II reveal that esoteric societies within the Nazi regime did weave such myths into ideology, though how far belief turned into action is still debated. Seismology, the science meant to close these questions, has instead left gaps wide enough for speculation. The Earth is mapped in layers: crust, mantle, outer core, inner core. Yet anomalies remain, continent-sized blobs of unknown material at the boundary of mantle and core, vast reservoirs of water locked in minerals, and unexplained vibrations that circle the planet. Each is explained in fragments, but together they leave space for wonder. If myths insist on kingdoms below, if expeditions raise more questions than answers, if science itself admits the interior remains largely unmapped, then the silence beneath becomes not emptiness but potential. We began with myths of the underworld, the Ant People, Patala, Shambhala, Agartha. We traced them through cities carved in stone, through floods and tremors, through caverns alive with alien life. Now, at the threshold of modern secrecy, the same question lingers. Could hidden civilizations still exist inside Earth? Perhaps they are not myths at all, but survivors who chose depth over destruction, silence over revelation. The earth beneath your feet is steady, but not still. Tremors ripple, waters flow unseen, heat radiates upward. In every vibration, every cavern, every unexplored void, there is room for the unknown. And so we close where we began, with darkness. But this darkness is not empty. It holds echoes of memory, fragments of myth, anomalies of science, and suspicions of secrecy. It is a mirror, reflecting our deepest longing that mystery has not yet vanished from the world, that beneath us, folded in time and stone, a hidden civilization still endures. If you have listened this far, let the silence settle around you. Feel the weight of the earth above, the cool breath of imagined caverns below. Mystery holds you as you drift into rest, and if the thought lingers that a people may still wait in the depths, let it be not fear, but wonder. Where are you listening from tonight, and at what time? Share your place, your moment, so that others travelling this path in silence may know they are not alone.